On this week's episode of Uncomfortable Conversations.
I'm going to talk to you.
Not now, later.
No, now.
We talk with Black law enforcement officers about Black Lives Matter.
Don't talk to me about a land of the free and the home of the brave until everybody's free.
This week's host is Brittany Lowe. This is an Uncomfortable Conversation.
Well, for Pete's sake, say yes or no.
All right, well, Reggie, it's good to have you. My name is Brittany, of course. We just did some intros, and we're just glad to have you and to share your perspective. We really want people to be able to open up their perspectives of, society in general, just being able to get in someone else's shoes, and we'd love that you're going to share with us however much you'd like to today. But first, can you share with us a little bit about your rank and your primary duties as an officer?
Okay, yeah, no problem. So my rank is officially as a police officer. That's like your bottom tier. Mm-hmm. And, you promote from that rank. So it's the equivalent of being a private in the military.
Okay.
And so my daily functions or daily duties consist of, responding to calls that come into 911 service centers and investigating them, and in the course of that investigation, determine what sort of action, I guess you could say criminal action or criminal action has taken place, and either affect an arrest, recommend civil course of action, or just filing a report. And that's basically it. And patrolling the city.
How many years have you been doing that?
I just made 5 years this last April.
Nice. Congrats. That's awesome. Did you know that you always wanted to get into police force work growing up? Okay.
No. I wasn't one of the ones who was like from a kid, just, this is what I want to do. I love it. Oh yeah, I can see my future self just wearing a badge. And no.
Really? Was it kind of like by default? Like you took a couple different paths in life and then you got around to this unexpectedly?
Yeah, it was just kind of like a course of events that led to this, honestly. And I was working as a store merchandiser and account manager for Dr. Pepper. Nice. And one day I was just working in a store and I was just like, it's 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm like working my tail off and I'm not really being used to my full energy. I feel like myself is wasting away. Mm-hmm. And I prayed on it and talked to some people, and I just landed on becoming a police officer.
Wow. That's a big jump. Some people would maybe choose something like teacher, maybe less dangerous, where you feel like you're making an impact, but not putting your life in danger. So that's admirable.
Oh yeah. And I definitely considered that as a factor of, this is a profession where you can lose your life quicker than other professions, or at all.
Yeah.
And I mean, I still don't let that affect me in my day-to-day interactions with people.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So we kind of want to talk a lot. I know you got to read the questions and kind of know what we're focusing on, which is Black Lives Matter is really, a focus of our culture right now. And we wanted to get your perspective as a Black officer. Do you feel like you have to approach your job differently than your white colleagues?
No, I don't. I just feel that with not even with things how they are right now with the Black Lives Matter movement, but since I became a police officer, I kind of felt like, especially in the Black community, there's just certain things we don't know, or that we just have a natural nature to distrust the police. Mm-hmm. And so whenever I get those calls, or not even get, whenever I am assigned or whenever I request calls involving Black people, regardless of the outcome, I always take that extra time to explain everything, because most of the time we don't know. Mm-hmm. And it takes someone who does know, regardless of if they don't like it or if they have some apprehensions about it, it is what it is. Like, and I'm not gonna be demonstrative or demanding. I'm just gonna talk to you like I'm talking to you right now, just normal human being.
Mm-hmm. Do they Do you find that people look to you instead of listening to your white colleagues when they're, if say if you both respond to a call and you respond to a call of Black, citizens, do you find them more trusting of you? Do you see that dynamic change at all, or does it seem pretty even across the board?
It's pretty even across the board, but the turning point is when, let's say if I have a white partner, the turning point is where, like, if my white partner says something that the Black person doesn't agree with, then they'll look at me and they'll be like, "Come on, my brother, is this the same thing? Like, is this true? And I'm like, yes, it's 100% true. Like, I would tell you the exact same thing."
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. It sounds like there's more of a trust there,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's good. It's good that you're representing the Black community as an officer. I think that there should be more Black officers too.
Well, I definitely try to recruit, heavy in the Black community, because the best people to police your community are the people who are from that community.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And
they already have that trust built in, right? Like the community knows them, they trust them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. They know they're not going to do them wrong.
Yeah, that makes sense. My son is one of those, he's 7. He's one of those kids that wants to be a police officer. He's the one who, like, every time they ask him, like, what job do you want to do when you grow up? He's like, police officer. So it's just interesting over the years, consistently, that's what he's liked. But who knows? I mean, he's got a lot of years to decide if that's what he still wants to do.
Exactly.
But,
No. Hey, and as his mother, you're doing your job, and you're not necessarily killing his dreams, but you're being real to him. You're letting him know, hey, I understand that's what you may want to do as you grow up, but life happens.
mm-hmm.
Just take life as it comes to you, and if that's still an option that you want to do when you grow up,
mm-hmm.
it's up to you, to support them or not, because there are some Black families, Black mothers, who don't support their children's professions as police officers.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's specifically because why? Why is that?
I guess because me personally, it hasn't happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I just finished last week talking to a coworker who he's currently dealing with that, where he has family members who are turning their backs to him because of the profession he's chosen. And I think it stems from just the previous decades of police brutality and everything sort of like coming from slavery, or after slavery, from Jim Crow to the KKK, and how they were associated with the police. And so it's very tough.
Yeah. No, I imagine probably more now this year than it ever has been in the past couple of years, in the 2000s. And I worked with Plano Magazine. Nick is also one of the founders of Uncomfortable Conversations, and we met through this Plano Magazine platform years ago. And recently they, did an article on the police chief in Plano, Ed Drain, who's a black officer, has been serving in Plano, and he was quoted saying that, "I'm blue and I'm Black, so I can very easily say I'm blue. I support Black Lives Matter, and I think Black Lives Matter, but I think blue lives matter too." And we just wanted to know from your perspective, like, what does that feel like to you? Do you feel a deeper duty to Black or blue in a moment where, there's, racism or something going on in a moment? Like, which one kind of takes precedence, if it does?
That's an extremely tough question, but I'll try my best to answer that.
Of course, take your time.
Just to be me, take everything as I perceive it and as it's happening in real time, and not bringing in past experiences or anything like that into what's currently going on. Now, as a Black man, of course, I believe Black Lives Matter, and I do believe that the peaceful protesters who say all lives won't matter until Black Lives Matter, and that's roughly true, because there are, and I don't mean roughly as in there's some fault to that. I mean roughly as in it's going to be very hard to accomplish that with current with current policies and politicians in place.
Mhm.
So I'm very pro Black Lives Matter because when I take the uniform off, I'm a Black man.
Mhm.
And I got to tell you, where I live, and I get off late nights sometimes, I get pulled over. And this happened to me, I think a few months, or not last year, this happened to me last year. Officer pulled me over,
Mhm.
and the first thing he says as I roll down the window and he walks up, I make a gesture, I brush some crumbs off my shirt.
Mhm.
And he says, "Where's the weed?" And I had to take a step back. I was like, "Excuse me? You didn't even tell me who you are. You didn't even tell me why you stopped me. You just jumped straight to, where's the weed? You didn't even look like in my car just to see maybe if I had some food or something," which was the case. I stopped at Jack in the Box, had some fries, and I was eating them on the way home.
Mhm.
And for him to just jump right to that, I was very, like, my agitation level kind of jumped 10, 20%. And then he realized he was in the wrong, and he stepped back and he apologized and he said, "Okay, well, sir, my name is so-and-so. This is why I pulled you over. And I need your identification."
Mhm.
So I was like, I told him that's how you should have started the conversation, the traffic stop. That's how you were trained. That's how I was trained. Because I told him I'm a police officer. Okay.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, he didn't apologize for anything. He just said, "Get your," so my traffic violation was my license plate light was out.
Hmm.
Something very minor, something that you could have just driven up next to me.
Yeah.
Hey, get that taken care of.
Exactly.
Which I do that all the time.
Mhm.
I don't believe in stressing someone out for something minor like that.
Yeah.
But anyways, I say all that to say that at the end of it, if he doesn't feel like he really made a mistake and doesn't feel sorry for it, so I called the supervisor, I told him what happened, and I told him what I think should be recommended to that officer. Remedial training, sensitivity training, something, traffic stop training, so that he knows that this type of interaction or this type of traffic stop is not the way it's supposed to go.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, that's the Black part of me.
Mhm.
So the blue part of me is just like the Black part. I'm gonna take everything I've learned, how I was raised, and bring it to the job. I'm not gonna let the job change me, change my core values, change how I was raised. Every person I interact with, I'm gonna come at you with respect, dignity, and believing that you are exactly telling me the truth.
Mm.
I'm not gonna start off with, "Oh, I already know you're lying to me," or getting to the point where I arrest you or a confrontation ensues.
Mhm.
So and forgive me if I ask you to reiterate did you want to know the blue part or just?
Yeah, both. I mean, anything you want to share just about that. I can imagine that there's a little bit of tension there, especially in the climate right now where you're a Black man, like you said, when you take your uniform off, you're a Black man, when you put on your blue, and there's so much animosity and so much anger towards blue
Mhm.
lives right now. And I'm sure there's a little bit of resentment and frustration towards Black lives, that people are frustrated that this is even a thing, and so I can only imagine what the tension is like.
Oh, I'm sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh no,
No,
you're good.
I was talking to some people on a call the other day, and they were saying that they don't understand why. Of course, they weren't Black. They were saying they don't understand the Black Lives Matter movement, and even when there's so many like Black on Black crime. And I was like, well, hold on a minute.
Mhm.
There's all sorts of crime. There's white on white crime, Hispanic on Hispanic crime, but even that, it's not secluded. It's just crime.
Mhm.
Like, and every race has crimes that happen to them, and it gets dealt with in a different manner.
Mhm.
And that's just the nature of it. So, and I explained that to them first, and then I said, well, as far as the Black Lives Matter movement, you have Black lives or Black people who are voicing themselves in a way that is reminiscent of the civil rights movement, but maybe a little bit more intense, because we've now seen that even after the civil rights movement, we're still not 100% treated as equal or fairly across the board, across the criminal justice system, equal and fair employment, education. Like there's what is it? Systemic, even with systemic racism, preventing Black or minority groups from living in certain areas, or like I said, getting certain jobs. And until you, the person who is not Black, understands that, we can't really move forward as one unit together.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Like I went down the black hole of Facebook posts, you know, sometimes you just do it. And I got on someone's page that was like posting all these like images of it was odd. It was like white protests during the pandemic versus Black protests and Black Lives Matter. And so the signs of the white protesters would say like, open our salons and our bars. We're tired of being like, we need to cut our hair and we miss drinking. And then the Black Lives Matter was like, stop killing our children. And it was very like opposite. But then, you know, I shouldn't have, but I read the comments. One of the guys said, well, stop killing yourselves and then we'll talk about stop, you know, like the violence against Black lives. And that just got me, like, it really affected me that day. Like, I was like, it felt personal, though it wasn't even my post. I don't even remember whose page I was on. But, you know, I don't even know. I think the guy lives in the UK, like not even in the US, and had this view of us killing each other. And that was just like, that we're asking for more than we should be asking for. Like, you know, and I didn't know, you know, have you experienced, like you kind of talked about that a little bit, but just like, how is that? What do you think about that just in general?
For one, I feel that that's kind of one-sided. I mean, we're not the only country that's ever had slavery or ever had any backlash from a minority group being treated as unfairly. So for him to say that, I mean, I get it. The whole thing started with George Floyd, or even before that with Ahmaud Arbery, and it just kind of like took hold from there and went nationwide and worldwide. And now everyone wants to get a hold of this and either try to understand it or make it seem like it's like the worst thing that you could do while your country's still trying to come together after all these horrific police involved events or citizen involved events where a Black life is taken for no reason. And that, yeah, it's really hard to comprehend and speak on, because you want to try to state your claim, or not your claim, but you want to try to state your argument and be understanding of the other person's argument and let them and educate them if they're wrong, in the hopes that they can be an adult and understand and respect that. And when they don't, when they completely ignore what you're saying and that their opinion, their statements are the only thing that matters and nothing you say can influence or change their mind or their opinion, that's when we're kind of at a stalemate as a society.
That's true.
When even as a grown adult, you want to stop the learning process. And I'm sorry, like I can go on and on and on and on about that.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good because I think that's the issue, that people aren't really they're not willing to be flexible with their beliefs, you know, and oftentimes what they believe isn't even what they believe, it's what their parents believed. And so they're just adopting that belief and thinking, well, I don't want to disappoint my parents, so of course I'm going to believe what they told me to believe. And so this is great that you're like sharing about this, because we really want hopefully people who watch this show to really understand different viewpoints, because it's all about just exposing yourself to different types of people. Listening, I think, is huge, that people have forgotten how to listen. And like you said, even if you do disagree, if you get to a point where people aren't willing to move, then you just peacefully disagree. You don't have to keep, you know, pushing it or creating more tension.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like that understanding of even in a police incident, where if I tell you that something is definitely wrong or something is definitely criminal, but in your mind, you're saying, no, it's not. You've got nothing on me. You've got no reason to detain me, no reason to arrest me, no reason to take me to jail. The back and forth doesn't necessarily stop with some officers. Mm-hmm. Now, when we have officers who have a brain and they realize, okay, I've tried to reason with you. I've tried to let you know that this is definitely wrong. And before we get to the point of being arrested, just keep it civil. Like right now, just how me and you were talking. Don't escalate it, because once you escalate it, now you start to go into a different area of the police encounter. Mm-hmm. And that is an area where, unfortunately, the most severe outcome could happen of someone losing their life. Yeah. Versus simply placing someone in handcuffs and taking them to jail. Mm-hmm. And so just to, I'm sorry, I got off track. No, you're good. But in an effort to avoid the banter of going back and forth, some officers will just jump straight to, I'll write you this citation. Me and you can appear in court before a judge and dispute this, mm-hmm. and that'll be the end of it. Or, sir, sir or ma'am, I've explained it to you. You're still not comprehending everything. You're still not comprehending that you've broken the law. Mm-hmm. However, you may have been raised to believe that this sort of action may not be criminal. It definitely is. And you're being placed under arrest. Mm-hmm. And I'll say it just like that. Yeah, yeah. And, if I have to make the arrest, I'll make the arrest. And yes, understandably, that other person or the now arrested person is going to have definitely some anger towards me, mm-hmm. because maybe this action, they've done this over time, and never received any sort of consequence or punishment. Mm-hmm. But when they finally do, they still don't understand it until they're before a judge or before it sets in and they're in the backseat of that squad car, which is not comfortable at all. Right. In handcuffs. Yeah. And just as a way to alleviate that violent confrontation, a lot of officers will go ahead and place someone in handcuffs and under arrest, mm-hmm. Just to avoid the back and forth. Yeah. You don't want it to escalate. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And in some cases, the back and forth is a good thing as far as educating. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the back and forth is a bad thing, whereas the other person may be stalling me as the officer in order to get away. That makes sense. That's a lot to decipher in a moment when you're talking to someone, because I'm not very good at multitasking in general. I need to focus on a conversation. I can't imagine thinking a couple steps ahead of that conversation in case there's different ways that this could go, right? Every time you encounter a citizen that might be under arrest or a suspect or something, you have about 10 different scenarios of how that can go, mm-hmm. while you're talking to them. I don't even know how you can even decipher that while trying to educate. Yeah. And it's crazy because being an officer, we have access to so many things before we talk to, let's say if you were the suspect, before mm-hmm. I talk to you, if there's a call that's been made and we have a victim that's alleging that you assaulted them, or let's just say with a simple assault. Mm-hmm. And so I already have all that information. I have what you did to them or what they're claiming you did to them, mm-hmm. and that they have bruising or whatever. And if I talk to them before I talk to you, now I have physical evidence. I have their personal testimonies to me that I will put in a report. Mm-hmm. And then when I encounter you, let's say you're not at the scene, but you come walking up oh, hey, what's going on? Why were police called? This and that. And then I start talking to you, trying to figure out what's going on with everything. And I'll either try to match what you're saying to what they're saying, or I'll take your statement completely separate and their statement completely separate and try to see where does it flow? Where is there some questionable things that may have happened, and to just try to talk to you. Mm-hmm. And depending on the reaction I get, you may get the officer who's just standing there mm-hmm, Okay, yeah, no, I understand. Yeah, things happen, arguments happen, people throw objects to, I may move to the side of you, I may turn my gun side away from you while I'm still talking to you, just to get myself ready for when I finally tell you, hey, okay, because of what you just told me, I have no choice here. We either have family violence or we have an assault that I have to arrest you.
Yeah.
Like, I can't just let you go. I have to arrest you. And I'll say it just like that. And some are receptive of it and there's no confrontation or no fight or no resistance. Or some, as soon as they see me do this, like, oh, they'll address it like, hey, why'd you turn away from me like that? Or why'd you unhook your handcuff pouch? So it's already raising.
Yeah.
And I'm still trying to bring it down, but
Yeah. Do you find that, like, in the case of George Floyd or other instances like that those officers didn't know how to employ that ability to communicate first and not escalate? Or do you, like, I know this is a kind of off the wall question. It wasn't in the original questions, but I just
no. And hey, if you have an off the wall question, hey, I'm all for it because I'm an open book.
Okay.
So with that being said, I feel that those officers, and I can't, it sucks being having to Monday morning quarterback. Do you know what that term means?
No, but I can guess.
So
after
it's
the game,
it's like after you watch a football game, and if you're the losing team, on Monday you start reviewing film, and you're like, oh, I could have done this better. I could have done that better. It's like a debrief.
Okay.
Like that. So with that in mind, the way those officers encountered Mr. Floyd, I think initially it starts off great. Like there was some confrontation or there was some verbal disagreement, but I think once they got him out the car and they handcuffed him, put him on the ground or whatever, there was nothing wrong there. And then after that, we all know what happened. So to say that it's a training thing, I don't think so. I think it's more of what one officer does. Others who are maybe less trained or have less time on will follow suit of the more experienced officer.
Yeah.
And with that being said, even though you may follow suit of the more experienced officer, like originally how I described, I won't let this job change who I am. Those officers, you would think, like your normal person, your normal police officer would like hear him crying out, mama, like I can't breathe, and realize, okay, let's stop and figure out what we need to do, like to get him to stop crying out for his mama, or saying he can't breathe. But something didn't click over. Like the animosity of the resistance or the actions by, not animosity, but the overly forceful actions of the officers, I guess maybe was a little too much and they didn't turn the switch.
Yeah.
Like after you've gotten them in, after you've gotten compliance, because once someone's in handcuffs, even if they try to run from you, you can still catch them. Right. Even the most out of shape officer, you can catch them because you need your arms for momentum. But sorry, that was
it's funny. I'm trying to imagine that scenario. Yeah.
But yeah, like once you gain compliance and someone's under arrest, that's when. So I was trained that turn off the aggressive side, and now just make sure that person is okay. Handcuffs aren't too tight. Sit them up. Or turn them over if they're on their stomachs. Sit them up so they're like in a seated position. Make sure that they're okay. And if they need medical aid, hey, go ahead and call medical aid just to cover all your bases.
Yeah.
So that they can't say you didn't do everything you were trained to do. Because even before this, like officers are trained to be forceful in their in their tactics of effecting an arrest. But once that force is achieved, or once that force and compliance is achieved, now you turn to making sure you don't overstep your bounds as a police officer, and what I'm forgetting the term here, but forgive me. But basically, that you don't just treat this man or woman like an animal, and like they don't matter.
Yeah.
Like turn the human side back on, I guess, in layman's terms.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's really powerful. I think that you always go back and wish that things could be done differently. Everyone wants to go back and rewind. And I'm sure, I hope that those officers are feeling that way and wish that they could go back in time and make a different decision and have some more self-control and discipline to be able to turn that off when they needed to. But with that being said, like, what do you feel like is like the most misunderstood part of being a police officer? Like, what's some things that you wish the community would understand about the relationship between the police and the community? If there is one.
Yeah, there's definitely some. I got the questions and I just kind of brainstormed last night, and I jotted down some things. And one is that no one is perfect by any means, whether they're in front of the badge or behind the badge. No one's perfect. The only perfect being was Jesus Christ. And he's no longer here. Yeah. And he essentially is who we model ourselves after for those of us who are Christians and followers of that faith. And the understanding of there's definite right and definite wrong. And the internal conflict we have with knowing what's right and wrong, but still acting on what's wrong in spite of the fact that we just know, but we still decide. There's something mentally, there's something that's in us that still decides to do the wrong thing. And so I think that's one of the things I want everyone to understand, regardless police or citizen, is no one is perfect. We all make mistakes, and be an adult. If you make a mistake, own up to it. Even if it's at the cost of arresting someone, you made a wrongful arrest that you realize after the fact. Hey, come forward with that. Hey, I didn't have everything I needed at the time, so I thought everything I had was good, but it turns out it wasn't. I apologize, or try to make amends for it. And it's hard to make amends for something like that when you take someone's life.
Right? Yeah. No amount of apologies can.
Yeah, no amount of apologies, no amount of receiving any sort of check from a police agency or a city can ever take place of someone's life,
right? However
old or however young. So that is just one thing that I try to tell everybody, that we're not perfect, but we definitely try to minimize those types of wrongful deaths when they don't need to happen. And I mean, even when they do happen, it's a travesty, but it's become an understanding that it's one of those aspects of this job that may happen. Even though we try to avoid it, it's a possibility that it may happen either to the police officer or to the suspect.
Yeah.
Spoke about that. So yeah, I jotted down some notes. Forgive me if I just go back and forth.
No, you're fine. Take your time.
And along with the whole idea that police officers are people too, we're people first. This is just a job. Like, I'm telling you right now, if I wasn't in school right now, I would just be like, I could find another job next week. It's just a job. Like, and you can make a career out of this job, but at the same time, I'm a human being, and if I approach you with respect and I give you, I'm essentially how I'm talking to you, I would expect as another grown adult specifically that you return it in kind to me. Like, no grown person likes to be cursed out, from jump.
Yeah.
No grown person likes to be just walked up on and demanded certain things. So if we can just talk as adults initially, that could possibly like stop most of the violent police encounters that happen. Now, the other side of that is, if you have a serious situation, you may not have time to have a peaceful approach at first. It may have to be violent in order to, and you may have to gain compliance in order to then start the communication process of, hey, what's going on? Calm down. I know you're in handcuffs, but let's figure out what got you in handcuffs and then talk about it from there. So I wrote something down last night, and I think it kind of identifies with the question you're asking even more so. And I wrote it down, and it sounds like this. Police are just as trustworthy as the community is trustworthy. So if there's distrust or untrustworthiness in the police, then there's trustworthiness issues in the community. We both take steps forward and we both take steps back, but we shouldn't let the actions of the few members of the community or the few members of the police department ruin our collective trust of one another.
Yeah, that's great. That's so true. I think it sounds like overall in society, it would be helpful if we were able to practice humility, like on both sides. Like you said, an officer that knows that they maybe did something wrongful, accusation, that they could say that they're sorry and try to make amends for that.
Mm-hmm.
And same for the community, like humility will help not getting repeat offenses, right? If you hear what someone's teaching you and telling you like, hey, you're doing this wrong, then accept it and don't try to like combat it with your pride or whatever it is that kind of bubbles up.
Yeah, and speaking like pride issues are a big thing with not necessarily. Yeah, well, I'll say with police, and I'll use myself as a personal example. Like I said, I'm an open book.
Mm-hmm.
So this one incident where this gentleman was arrested. He just happened to be Black and just very mouthy, and I was completely professional, told him everything before I did it, and he still just didn't comprehend. And we tussled a bit, and the outcome still was he went to jail. But at the end of it, the humanity side of me kicked back in, and I told him while we were driving to jail, I was like, hey, I know in the heat of the moment, you may have said some things. I definitely said some things, and I apologize for saying that to you, man. I let my voice get the best of me, and I should have never said that to you. Or I may have, I told you the wrong thing. I apologize if I lied to you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm that much of a man and that much confident in myself that I can apologize to you, and that it's not because that I overly messed up and that I'm just trying to cover my butt so I don't get sued. It's coming from a place of general concern, and I want you to know that what I did, I don't condone. I don't take pride in that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna Monday morning quarterback myself for future incidences, so that I don't say the same things I said to you that I say to someone else.
No, that's huge. That's huge. I think more officers and more people in general should be like that. It's hard to be introspective these days, and be willing to change and grow. But we're coming up on time. I just have one last question I wanted to ask you. It's kind of a two-part question. How would you approach talking with kids? Like if parents or guardians have to talk to kids, especially minorities, about how to handle police encounters. And in particular, like I have a Black son. He's 7 years old, told you he wants to be a police officer. And, I hope that he will continue to be a great kid and grow up to be a great adolescent and not get any type of trouble. but the chances of him being stopped even for a traffic violation is very high. I mean, everyone gets pulled over by the police at some point for whatever reason, and I don't know, what would you suggest how to prepare a parent to talk to their son specifically about how to handle a police encounter?
Well, I would, because my mother definitely told me about that at a young age, herself or myself. And I think I would follow her suit in that understanding, like talk about the history of the police, that it can be a bit prejudiced and biased some of the times, and they can be completely helpful and protective the other part of that time. And she told me, it's like, it really just depends on that officer that comes to your scene and how they interact with you. Like, don't let their interaction fire you up. Like, if they're coming at you a certain way, agitated, aggressive, yelling, demanding that you do this now, and you on the other end, okay, just hold on a minute, it's over here, or let me get off the phone or whatever. Do it now. Like, don't let that sort of response amp you up to get you in trouble and you in handcuffs. Like, talk to your kids, let them know that generally police are here to serve and protect, no matter how old, no matter how young, no matter who you are, where you come from, the color of your skin, how you talk, how you dress. We're here to protect you and make sure that you're safe. And let them know that there have been incidences, specifically like with Black people involved, that led to lives being taken. And while it's difficult to explain that to a child, you just want them to know that even in this day and age, the color of your skin is still being judged, even in the most minute of occasions. And even when you're dealing with police, you want to think it's not a possibility that, like you said, that there is some reasonable explanation you pulled me over, or there's some reasonable explanation you walked up and started talking to me. That those type of interactions can and will happen to you as a Black man or as a Black woman, and don't fall victim to their I'm sorry if I'm looking away. I'm just like that's the police part
Observing.
Yeah. But understand that that police have a job to do, and if it involves talking to you, detaining you, just listen to what the officer says. Don't give the officer a reason to think that you may be a suspect or doing anything suspicious. Don't do anything you wouldn't do in front of your parents. Like, pretend like they're always watching you.
Yeah.
If you have to ask, like, not pretend, but when an officer's talking to you, don't just go ahead and do things you would normally do, like put your hands in your pockets or behind your back, or like clench them up. Like, let the officer see your hands. Even more so, let the officer know that you're not a threat. You have no weapons on you. You have no drugs. And even go ahead and volunteer. Hey, if you want to pat me down, go right ahead, so that you are comfortable and I don't have to feel so tense. Like, and that's hard to tell a child that.
Yeah.
Especially a Black child. Or any child, well, specifically a Black child, but any child, you already know. But because of the current climate, anyways, just, it sounds like very childish, but ask before you do when dealing with the police. Because if you ask before you do, then the police can't say, well, I never told him he couldn't, or he he did this furtive gesture. He was reaching for something in his pocket or around his waistline. So I didn't know what he was reaching for. So I'm going to defend myself. Or he or she was reaching for, excuse me. Mm-hmm. So always ask before you do when dealing with the police. And just comply. When there's something that they're telling you that isn't making sense to you, or that, you know, like they're telling you you did a crime that you know you didn't do, try to explain to the officer, like if it's in a store or something, hey, go check the video recording, or, you know, I was on my phone the whole time. You can talk to the person I was on the phone with. We were FaceTiming, whatever the case may be. Try to gather as much evidence to show that you did nothing wrong, to show the officer, so they can essentially leave you alone so you can go about your day. And it sucks that you have to say that, because we operate under the umbrella of all people are presumed innocent until proven guilty. But it's almost like you have to prove your innocence before your guilt.
Yeah.
And
some people see the black skin as you're already guilty. Like they feel like, you know, you've seen the signs, the protest signs saying like, my skin is a crime, because it feels like it's like automatically we're suspects just because we're brown. You know, in a store setting, if there's someone for shoplifting, I feel like they're going to scan for like all the black people first and be like, okay, you know.
That's really crazy, because to a kid who's never really grown up with that kind of experience, as a parent, you may have a troublesome time explaining it to your child, because all your child wants to do is like just play with Johnny down the street, or play with Michelle, and they may be different, like they may be of different race or skin color, and like a police officer may see them playing together and talk to them, and they may talk to your friend differently than they talk to you. And you just kind of have to be there for your child and let them know that I don't understand why they spoke to you differently and than your other friends. But that's one of the things that you as a parent want them to know and understand, that is a definite possibility.
Yeah.
And even speaking as a police side of me, like the officers I work with, I know that they're going to be just like me. You know, you don't associate yourself with people who don't sort of like, who follow the same kind of letter that you do, kind of act the same way that you do with people, who kind of communicate with people the same way that you do. And so the officers who I associate myself with 90% of the time are just like me. They don't jump to conclusions. They speak to you first, regardless of if you're a child or an adult. And they legitimately try, no matter if it takes an hour, no matter if it takes 6 hours, to figure out what happened. Because at the end of the day, or at the end of the call, you could be taking someone's freedoms away. And that's the biggest thing to understand. That's one of the biggest things to try to teach a child, is that you have freedoms, you have rights, and that police may have to, because of their job policies and procedures, limit you to your rights and your freedoms. And it's not because the police officer has so much power. It's the policies and general orders that are governed to them, that gives them the authority to do that. And if we want to see change in that, we have to protest, like, to our politicians, to our policymakers, to our judges, to our people in government down in Austin, speaking in Texas, for policy change. Because until policy changes across the board, police officers will still follow what's already in place. And and if they have to enforce it with lethal force, because policies say it, they have that as their evidence that gives them the authority to use lethal force.
Mm-hmm. And that's what's gotten so many cops in trouble these past couple of months, I think, is that's
abuse of authority.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. This has been really enlightening. We kind of came up to our time here, went a little bit over, but I'm glad that we were able to talk and like be a little more conversational about this. Because it's good to get to know your perspective and like how you've been experiencing in the past 5 years serving as a police officer. And we just thank you for your time. Did you have anything else that you wanted to share that we, didn't ask and you just wanted people to know?
Oh no,
You shared everything.
I'm just me personally. I'm a God-loving person, a God-fearing man, and I try to do my best on every single call I go to, and at the end of the day, I still love you regardless of if you did a crime or not, and I still treat you as a human being. I don't treat you as an animal. I don't treat you anything less than me. Mm-hmm. If you or Jeffrey, whomever, this is an open call. Whenever they allow for the Dallas Police Department, because I work for Dallas, mm-hmm. Whenever they allow us to start doing ride-alongs, hey, I'll be more than happy if you want to ride along with me any night.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much. That's powerful, and we really appreciate your time this morning on a random Thursday to talk with us about this. And yeah, we just look forward to getting this out so more people can hear your story and your perspective and everything, Reggie. So thank you so much for taking time to talk to us.
Thank you. It's a true blessing. And thank you again, Jeffrey, for the opportunity. And I pray you guys have a blessed day, and I wish you guys nothing but the best.
Hi, I'm Nick Bridwell, the creative director of Uncomfortable Conversations. If you were impacted by this video and you think others could benefit from it, then we just ask that you please like and subscribe to our channel. That way we can bring you more content. Thank you so much for coming back to us, and we wish you the best.